About the structure of C++ program. In this video, we will be discussing about the general structure of a C++ program. Now, a C++ source file is comprising of various sections. Now, all these sections may not be there in single program, but usually in large programs, we can see almost all the sections. So, most of these sections are mandatory, but some are optional. Whenever you save your file with .cpp extension, the source code consists of various sections. We will be discussing about various sections in a program in this particular video. Now, the first and the most important section is the document test section. Though it is not mandatory as it generally includes comments, but a good programmer often needs to write a brief summary about what the program is, who has written this program, the date, the time when it was created, and a brief introduction about that program, so that it can be helpful in future reference. So therefore we add comments. Now comments are non-executable statement that serves as the message only for the programmer but not for the compiler, and that is it is ignored by the compiler. The compiler treats the comments as white spaces and is usually inserted at the beginning of the program. We will be showing you the program and explaining it with the help of program also, but for timing you can just understand it is a non-executable statement just added by for understanding of the program, and it is not executed by the compiler, that is ignored by the compiler, and it is just added to improve the readability of the code. Okay, so usually inserted at the beginning and it is optional. Now in C++ there are two types of comments, single line and multi-line. Now single line comments are usually written with double forward slashes, and a multi-line comment is written in the same way as in case of C. And all these comments are very necessary. Next section is the linking section, and in this linking section consists of preprocessor directives and using namespace section. So if you have noticed that in the hello program we have used preprocessor directive and using namespace section. So we'll be discussing about these two sections. Now preprocessor directives can include header files, macro expansion, conditional compilation, line controls. These are some of the sections that a preprocessor directive can include. Now a preprocessor directive is not a program statement but a directive to the preprocessor to do something before actual compilation of the code starts. Now there is a preprocessor that is basically comes into stage before compilation. If you can see or remember the stages of the program execution, in that we discussed about the preprocessor whose main task is to pre-process statements. Now it is directive to a preprocessor for pre-processing. Now it always begins with the hash symbol or a pound symbol, and the main function is to include header files, macro expansions. As you can see, these are the header files. And normally IOStream is the most common header file that we usually add. Then hash define is the most common macro. Then these are the conditional compilation, and line controls can also be added. Now where header file, as you know, is a text file that contains function declarations and macro definitions, and can also contain class and template definitions to be shared among source files. We'll be discussing how to create a header file also in our next few lectures, but for the time being you can assume that usually there are user defined header types, and IOStream is the most common standard header type. In addition, we have many other header types like IOManip, exception, memory, and many more. So all these are included by enclosing them either in angled brackets, as you can see, or they can be included by including them in the double quotes. Now the most important thing is they don't end with .h extension. As in contrast to C, if you remember, we had to add .h extension, and if you are working with Turbo, then also you need to add about .h extension, but here you can see there is no need of .h extension while working with header files, and this has to be remembered. In addition, you can also create user defined header types. We'll be discussing about these in the coming sections. So next is the namespace section. Now a namespace usually it is a part of C++ and not there in C, if you remember, is a region that provides scope to the identifiers declared in the program within it to avoid naming conflicts. Now we'll be showing you a program that how the naming conflicts are avoided with the use of namespace. And in order to use this namespace, we use a using directive or a keyword using followed by the namespace, and std is the standard namespace in which imports the entire this std namespace in the current namespace of the program. So if you write this particular thing, you might have seen that we can simply write cout and we can simply write until, and otherwise if you don't include this statement, you will have to specifically write std colon double colon followed by the name of that cout or ndln or anything that you want to use. So all the standard namespaces to be uh, imported into the current namespace of the program. For this, we have to include using namespace in this. Now, next is the global variable declaration section. Now, in this section, we include all the global variables that can be used throughout in the program, though it increases insecurity and makes your program insecure, but it is generally, if it should be avoided to use, but you can use it. And how can you use it? I will be telling you in the programming section of this particular slide. Next section is the class section. Now C++ is object-oriented programming and we have to create most of the program using classes. So we'll be discussing, most of the programs will be discussed with respect to classes, and in that context we'll be seeing these programs also. So it is an important section of your code and it includes a class declaration or definition. You can add all the classes definition, and that particular section of the program is considered as the class section, and this is the part of the program if object-oriented approach is followed. Now if you're not following object-oriented approach, or if you're simply writing a simple program to add two numbers, there is no need of class, so this section cannot be seen there. So it includes data, but obviously a class includes data members and member function, and you can see this in the particular program. The next very important part is function section. Now, as you know that it is to some extent a procedural language also, so it can include user-defined functions. These functions are not part of a class. So this section is usually part of the class if you are following procedural programming. Now, you might have work with C, and in that C language, you might have seen that you have created a lot of functions. I will be discussing a program in this context also, that how to include a function. Now, next is the main section. The main section is the one in which we write the main function. Now, every program must have a main function because it is from where the program execution begins. Now, program starts its execution by identifying where is main and accordingly proceeds with the program. So after initialization of non-initialized static class members to 0, this particular section come into picture, and it is always followed by a sequence of statements that constitute the code that carried out some specific task, and it is always enclosed because it's a user-defined function. You have to enclose it within curly braces. Now it is indicated by this starting of the code and ending of the code, and no doubt a main function is usually terminated by a closing brace, but it can terminate due to a variety of other reasons also. So this is and in C++ you have to remember that a main section cannot be declared inline or static, and both the versions, that is various versions, like you can simply write this, or you can write int main bracket that you have seen in the main hello program, and you can also write void. So you have to return it is not mandatory to return because it is optional statement to write a return 0 statement, but you should return so that it is considered as that you are something returning, you are returning some value. So it cannot be called recursively also, and nor can its address be taken. So we'll be discussing some programs in this context, that how this particular task is executed. So we'll now switching over to the programs, that is the various programs that will be used in this particular program. You can add documentation section. Now you can add a single line. Let me add a comment: program to print a message. So this has to be a comment. So I can also write this manually, that this statement has to be commented by adding 2 slashes, forward slashes, or I can also press control forward slash. So this will make this line a comment line. In addition, sometimes you want that comment should be of multiple lines, like program purpose, let be program name, then let it be author. We can add date and all that. And if you want to comment all these lines, you can select all these lines, very easy. You can press control plus alt shift A. Yes, alt shift A. Now this features have to be remembered, like you can toggle again, that is you can remove this by again pressing alt shift A. Okay, so when adding multiple lines of comment to make the to add to the documentation section, you can have the same style of coding, that comment style that you used in C. In addition, you can also add comment like this by adding a if statement followed by a condition which is not possible, and you do not need cout. Let me write some message. Now I just first save this program and run this program. I have saved this program and I'm running this program. Now you can see only hello world is printed, because everything that is in comments, that is a part of the documentation section, is ignored by the compiler, and it is only for the purpose of the programmer, so that he can better understand what it is the purpose. Okay, there is another way by which we can also add comments using conditional preprocessor statements, like if followed by 0 followed by cout, good morning, and if. Okay, so let me again save this program and run it. You can see again hello world, but if I put over 1 over here, so let's see something happens over here or not. So cout is not, I'm okay. I put something wrong over here. I should have again a preprocessor statement to have something. So I can just comment it out for the some time, that you can add comments in this way. Similarly, if I do 1 over here, preprocessor statements had to be included. Okay, Anshuman, hello world. It is mandatory to include 0 to make it comment. So this is not a preferred style, but you can do it in this way. So the code for adding documentation is this. Okay, so let's once again save it and run it. Okay, so this was there in the documentation section of this code. Now I will be discussing about the global namespace section. Let me show you a program. I have already made this program. So you can see we are having a global declaration. This is a global declaration. Now this is a local variable, local declaration, that his scope is limited to this particular block. Okay, and we have also enclosed a namespace. We have defined our own namespace. Okay, now if you can see over here, I have included std colon, that is double colon after every before every cout, and before any ln also. So if you want to avoid these all multiple declarations, then you have to include using namespace. That can be included, but that has to be included if you want to avoid it. So let us save and run this code. So you can see here that x, when simply written x, it is a local variable. If you have to access the variable with the same name as that of a global variable x, then you have to use this operator, that is a scope resolution operator. And similarly, if you have to use the same variable of the namespace within that scope, because x is there, x is the most powerful. By default, x is local variable. So if you want to use global variable, you have to use it this way, and for namespace you have to use it this way. So this is another global variable declaration section that is there in the program. Then you can also have functions, as I told you, user defined functions. Let us create we have that program. Now this is a program simple. We have created a user defined function sum that will be adding two numbers, and these are the two numbers. Now in order to execute this program, there is a very important thing that you should be aware of. You have to first go to settings, and settings are there, okay, extensions, and from extensions you have to run code configuration. Now I will be showing you this option. Okay, I have to scroll it down slowly so that it can be there. No, the cursor, okay, enable, okay, enable, run in terminal. Now this is a very important option. I have disabled it. Now you can see it will, when I will run this program, it will not execute. I have to first save it and then run it. So it will not execute. Now the same can be done if I execute it now. Run in terminal should be enabled. Now I save it and run it. Where is the code? Okay, over here. I save it and run it. Just it is showing some error. Okay, it's now running. I add two numbers, 20 and let it be 30. So it is very important to ensure that run in terminal is enabled if you want your code to include cin, that is input from the user. So if you don't do it, you will not be able to input two numbers. Okay. So in addition to this, there is a program that shows the use of macros and various header files, like you have used IOStream for cout, okay, IOmanip for you have used for set precision manipulator, cmath for performing mathematical functions. You have hash defined. Now this is again the pre-processing or linking section where the preprocessor will come into picture and ensure that every preprocessor directive has been handled properly. Now we have made a program to calculate the value of sine. Now in this particular, there is nothing but only thing is hash define, a macro definition is there. Then we have shown you the various commands. So this is to be executed. New terminal. Let me try with G++ option. If you remember, the program name is sum and it is .cpp. Let it be -o and it be sum dot, no, it is sum, no, the program name is macro, sorry, you have to write macro dot cpp. It should be .cpp -o followed by macro. If you want, it's okay. If you don't write, it will be a dot out, and followed by, I should write okay, dot slash macro. Okay, it's showing. I was writing wrong command, so this should not be there. It is running. It is showing me the value of sine that I have asked him to contribute to calculate. So this is how the things work with various sections, and you should be knowing about more about various when you will be discussing about the various programs.